All right, let's jump into this deep dive today. We're going to be looking at XRP and asking that age-old question, is it really decentralized? We've got a whole stack of articles here. Some are very much in the no camp, and some are very much in the yes camp. We've even got an exchange, a Finnish exchange called CoinMotion, who's actually listed XRP, but then simultaneously published an article saying that they have some concerns about how centralized it is.
Oh, wow. So they're kind of hedging their bets a little bit.
Yeah, it seems that way. It's going to be interesting to dig into this.
Yeah, it really does. I think this really highlights that tension that we see in the crypto space so much between the ideals of decentralization and then the realities of trying to build something that actually works.
Yeah, especially something that can,
Right.
integrate with traditional finance.
Right.
Where do we even begin with this?
Well, I think a good place to start is with the criticisms. The most common criticism that you see leveled against XRP revolves around this idea of unique node lists, or UNLs.
Okay, so UNLs are kind of at the heart of this whole debate then.
Yeah, I think you could say that. The argument that critics make, like Justin Bonds, a founder of Cyber Capital,
I've heard of him.
Europe's oldest crypto fund, they argue that these UNLs give the XRP Foundation way too much control. And that goes against this whole idea of a decentralized system.
So if Ripple and XRP are really separate, the way that some people argue, why does the XRP Foundation even have so much influence over these UNLs?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Bonds tries to address head on. He says that you could look at the history of these UNLs.
Yeah.
And how they developed. And it paints a pretty clear picture of centralization. He says that for a long time, there was only one UNL, the default one. That was hosted by the foundation.
Okay.
And even though other UNLs have come up since then, a lot of them still rely very heavily on the foundation's UNL. They often share a lot of the same validators. So it's not this kind of open and permissionless system that we see with some other blockchains.
So it's kind of like, if you want to be a part of the network, you have to play by their rules.
That's the criticism, yeah. Bonds argues that even though. You can technically modify your own UNL. There's a really strong incentive to just stick with the established lists.
Yeah.
Because you risk getting disconnected from the network if you don't.
Right. That makes sense.
It's like you're part of this club, and if you don't follow the rules, you get kicked out.
Yeah. It doesn't sound very decentralized.
It doesn't sound very decentralized. And, Bonds isn't just complaining. He actually offers a potential solution. He suggests that XRP should move to a proof-of-stake system.
Okay. Proof stake.
Which would do away with UNLs entirely.
Interesting. So explain that to me like I'm 5.
Okay, so imagine a blockchain is like this big city with all these roads.
Okay.
Right. Proof-of-stake is like having traffic lights.
Yeah.
That manage the flow of cars, which are like the transactions in this case.
Right.
UNLs are more like having this central traffic control center. That decides which roads are open and which roads are closed. So with proof-of-stake, it's more dynamic. It's more decentralized.
Okay. So what was the reaction to this idea?
Well, Bonds' arguments definitely caused quite a stir. A lot of people pushed back pretty hard. They said that Ripple, the company, and XRP, the cryptocurrency, are totally different things.
Right.
And that Bonds is kind of misdirecting his criticism by targeting Ripple when he should really be focusing on the technical aspects of the XRP ledger itself.
But even if we accept that, doesn't the XRP Foundation's control over the UNLs still raise some red flags?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. Because we have CoinMotion, this Finnish exchange, listing XRP, but then also criticizing its centralized nature.
So they want to, kind of have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, it seems that way in their article, which is actually titled, XRP is a Centralized Virtual Currency.
Wow.
They argue that XRP doesn't even operate on a traditional blockchain, and that Ripple Labs has way too much control over things, like the XRP supply, the release schedule, and even transaction security, through this thing called the hash tree system.
Okay, the hash tree system, what's that?
So it's this, it's basically a cryptographic system. I don't think we need to get into the technical details right now, but the point is, CoinMotion sees this proprietary technology as another example of Ripple's centralized influence.
So we've got one expert saying, scrap the whole thing, move to proof of stake. And we've got this exchange saying, yeah, we're listing it, but also be careful, guys. This thing is centralized.
It's a bit of a head scratcher.
It is. I think to really get a handle on this, though, we need to go back in time a little bit and look at the origins of Ripple and XRP.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Let's hop in our time machine.
Let's do it.
And see how this whole thing got started.
It's actually kind of fascinating. If you look at the way that Ripple and XRP started out, the vision was very different from what we see today. Early discussions on Hacker News and stuff like that, they revealed that XRP was mainly intended to facilitate transactions and
Yes.
track IOUs between people in real currencies like dollars and euros. XRP itself didn't have much value back then. It was mainly just used to pay transaction fees.
You know, read the story about a Hacker News user who got like 30,000 XRP for free just for helping to bootstrap the network.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine if you had that today?
Yeah, that would be a pretty nice little chunk of change.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Right place, right time, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because this early focus on real-world utility and integration with the existing financial system, that might actually be relevant to this whole debate about decentralization.
Okay. How so?
Well, some people argue that this historical context kind of suggests a more pragmatic approach to decentralization. They say that,
Right.
look at Ripple's history. They were collaborating with financial institutions, even before XRP was really a thing.
Yeah.
So they're saying that a certain degree of centralization was always part of the plan.
So they're not necessarily,
It's
totally against the idea of decentralization. But they're saying that to achieve their goals, they're willing to compromise a little bit.
Yeah, they see it more as like finding this balance between innovation and stability. It's not just about sticking to this rigid dogma of decentralization at all costs.
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to build a system that banks and other institutions are actually going to use, you can't be too radical.
Exactly. You need to meet them halfway. You need to find this common ground, this bridge between the traditional financial world and this new emerging world of crypto.
Isn't that what CoinMotion was saying? They were basically saying that XRP centralized features might actually be a selling point for these more conservative institutions.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it kind of brings us back to this fundamental question of what does decentralization actually mean in the crypto world?
Yeah.
Is it purely about the technical architecture?
Yeah.
Or do we need to consider other factors like adoption, real-world utility, even the kind of philosophical underpinnings of the project?
It seems like there are a lot of different ways to look at this.
There are. And I don't think there's one universally accepted definition of decentralization.
Yeah.
It's more of a spectrum. And different cryptocurrencies fall at different points along that spectrum.
So the question is, where does XRP land?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a simple yes or no answer.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that the level of decentralization can actually change over time. It's not static.
Okay. So I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the criticisms of XRP. Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about the arguments in favor of its decentralized nature.
Okay.
What are some of the key points that people who defend the system, what are they saying?
So one of the main arguments revolves around this concept of the unique node list itself. Critics see UNLs as a tool for control, but the people who like them, they argue that UNLs actually enhance security and stability. Remember, the whole point of a blockchain is to create this secure, tamper-proof record of transactions.
Right.
And they say that by having a curated list of validators with a proven track record to make the system more resilient to malicious actors or faulty nodes.
So you're saying that the UNLs are kind of like a quality control mechanism?
Yeah, you could say that. They argue that this is especially important for a network like XRP that's designed for fast and efficient transactions. You imagine just like a high-speed train network.
Okay.
You want to make sure the tracks are perfect, the signals are working properly, you don't want any derailments.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So speed and security are the trade-offs for maybe a little bit less decentralization.
Okay. So they're basically saying you can't have it all.
Right. And some people go even further, and they say that this approach actually makes XRP more suitable for real-world applications, especially in the financial sector, where security and reliability are absolutely essential.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Banks and these big institutions, they're used to operating in a highly regulated environment.
Right.
So a system with a little bit of control might actually be more appealing to them.
That's the argument. It's all about finding the right balance for the intended use case. And I think that's what makes this debate so interesting. There are valid points on both sides.
Yeah. All right. So we've heard from the critics. We've looked at the history. We've examined the counter arguments. I think it's safe to say that there's no easy answer to this decentralization question. But what I'm wondering is, what does all of this mean for someone who's holding XRP or thinking about holding XRP?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
What are the implications here? This is where things get really interesting for anyone who's actually thinking about investing in XRP. We've talked about all this stuff, but what does it actually mean for, if I buy some XRP, what does that mean for me?
Well, one of the biggest concerns with a more centralized system like this is the risk of censorship.
Okay.
So if one entity, like the XRP Foundation, has a lot of control over the network, they could theoretically block certain transactions.
Whoa. So even if I own the XRP, someone else could prevent me from using it.
Yeah, that's the concern. And it kind of goes against this whole idea of cryptocurrency being this permissionless system where you can transact freely.
And this isn't just theoretical either, right?
No, it's not just theoretical. I mean, we've seen cases where governments and regulators have pressured centralized crypto platforms to freeze accounts, block transactions, all sorts of things.
It makes you wonder, you know what happens if regulations change? Or if a government just decides it doesn't like XRP anymore?
Yeah, it's a risk that investors need to think about for sure.
Okay.
But then again, you could also argue that for people who really prioritize speed and efficiency and integration with the existing financial system, they might actually see these centralized aspects of XRP as advantages.
Right.
It all comes back to that trade-off.
Security versus freedom, control versus innovation.
Exactly.
It seems like every decision you make in the crypto world, you're always giving up something.
There's no free lunch.
No free lunch.
That's why it's so important to really do your research, understand the nuances of these different cryptocurrencies, and then make an informed decision based on your own needs and your own priorities.
All right. So we've talked about the arguments for and against. We've dug into the technical stuff. We even went back in time a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
It has been a journey. What's the big takeaway here?
I think the main takeaway is that this question of XRP's decentralization, it's a complicated one. There's evidence to support both sides. And the answer really depends on how you define decentralization and what you value most in a cryptocurrency.
It's not a yes or no answer. It's more about understanding the trade-offs.
Exactly.
And also recognizing that
different approaches can lead to different outcomes. There's no one right way to do this.
So the crypto world is kind of like the Wild West still.
It is. It's still very much the Wild West. And that's what makes it so
You
exciting.
don't know what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap things up here. We've covered a lot of ground today, from unique node lists to the philosophy of decentralization. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. What if XRP actually embraced a proof-of-stake system, like some people have suggested? Would it lose its unique position in the market? Would it just become another face in the crowd of decentralized cryptocurrencies? Or could it actually leverage its existing partnerships and infrastructure to become a dominant force in this decentralized financial world?
It's a really interesting question. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
The future of XRP is uncertain.
But it's definitely going to be interesting to watch it unfold.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, happy